gotta show me. And now I got coffee, but who came before me?
Yes, sir.
Told me. I want you to hold me before I go OD. Don't call on the police. Just keep it shit low key. You really my roadie. Take care of my OG if you really for me. Cause I treat your mama like I treat my mama. We fucked the.
Woo. Guy.
Brando.
So I'm thinking about all this ridiculous stuff. My girl gets in my car and she finds one of those Victoria's Secret sprays. And her first question to me is, what's going on here? And I was like, what? How do you immediately jump to what's going on here? I have a sister, first of all, ma'am, I've got a sister.
I didn't expect it to go any other way.
What's going on here? Well, apparently you sat down here and found something that's been here.
Wow, you handled that. Maybe I'm traumatized because I expected it to go south, but maybe I'm traumatized.
Yeah. It's because you're toxic. That's why.
Maybe
it's because it's.
Or maybe those aren't pantyhose in my backseat. Maybe it's just a do-rag.
Maybe it's just a do-rag. Listen. Before we even get into who's toxic and who's not toxic, we'd be remiss if we didn't start this podcast off the right way. Wow, it feels so good to be back in here. This is episode 6 of the All the Way Live podcast. Thank you for joining us. Whether it's 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, each and every one of you is appreciated. Thank you for joining us. Come on in, grab a seat, grab a plate, sit down. You feel me? We got Siri coming in and talking about no sweat. This ain't no more than a conversation between two brothers, two best friends, getting into things that we care about between life, love, politics, and anything that falls in between that. It's your boys Relake Gila holding down.
It's your boy Miles Xavier, impressed by the intro.
Just like that, we tapped on into the All the Way Live podcast. Welcome, man.
Body. Wow. I feel welcome. Siri felt welcome. I hope y'all feel welcome. We getting there. We're getting there.
It's growing, man. It grows. Like that's it's like therapy. You like roll a J by yourself and like that whole process is therapy. That portion is a therapeutic thing for me, I think.
Yeah. Unroll your week for us, brother. Dap in. Unroll your week. What it be like?
Listen, man, this week has been stressful. This week has been very stressful. This week has been full of activities for both of us. We have been everywhere and nowhere at the same time. We have been moving quickly and patiently at the same time. Personally, we've been focused this side on, some monetary moves, some business moves, which are looking promising. But more importantly, we are trying to find a way to keep feeding these kids. Man. And like, that's actually a conversation I wanted to get into with you about, which is just like, bro, why is it so difficult to be able to help people? Like it's not an easy, you think it's easy to help people, but it's actually so much more difficult than you think.
Yeah, I think just the way that from the time, at least in this country, right? You're a kid and then you're put in school. And then from the time you're in school, right, you're on your track. You're supposed to get your grades to do the best you can on your tests and get to the best school you can to get the best job you can. The system ain't really designed for you to start influencing other people's experience, right? You know what I mean? You have individual people that are selected to do that. You get celebrities that are kind of plucked out of individual society, and then you get like kind of politicians that kind of work towards that after a certain point in life, and you get like business people that that serve a need that get there because they hit a niche in society, but it's not really built for you to influence other people's experiences of life, so
it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem that way. Like for something as simple as we've got a partnership with a bread company to be able to give out a certain amount of allocated bread. And we were talking with some of our sponsors, some of the teams that we sponsor, and they've been coming to us just, uh, letting us know, like, listen, don't build expectation with any offering that you give. If you start to build expectation, then you get held to a standard that'll inevitably leave you to fail, and then people become almost dependent on it. And so it's like a fine line between dependency that you build when helping a community, but also, let me say the fine line is how am I helpful without creating dependency that eventually stifles the growth of the community.
Well, yeah, I think that's a question that a lot of service organizations are struggling to answer every day because they don't have dependable funding, dependable access to the resources that they serve the community with, whether that's human capital, whether that's the ability to employ consistently the amount of manpower that it takes to address an issue, right? Whether that's actual money, whether that's a space, whether they don't have the money to consistently have a space, right, to continually keep people engaged, because it does take incentives to keep people in the community engaged. I think a lot of community organizations are struggling with, like, what is their capacity on a consistent basis, right? And so I think what they are maybe being a little bit overbearing and trying to like impart on you, right, is that people need what you got. So if you tell them you got it, they'll show up. And if you don't got it, it looks bad on everybody's part that says they were involved. So make it very clear, that this might, be able to shut down at any time. And I saw that actually when I was checking out the website, right? Like that you guys were very stark in your wording that, the contract or whatever might be terminated at any point. And it's important to be real about that. But it's important that the people who are interfacing with the community on the ground level are very human about that, right? You know what I'm saying? That everybody is respectful and treats the space that what you're serving, that food, whatever that resource is, with respect, both for the people that are receiving it and for the people that have the opportunity to be a part of doling it out, for everybody to have an understanding that like this is relief, but it is not, for whatever reason. And we can talk about what the reason that it's not consistent is, but it's very important to make sure everybody's aware of that, and be, human about it, because people are looking for that. You tell people you got a resource that they need, they're hoping that they can stop worrying about that for as long as possible. And when it can only be a week, you have to be clear that it can only be a week or a month or a year,
Yeah, you don't want to build false dependency. And while you're getting into that bag, get into the bag of, how you feeling, how your week been. Dap on in, brother. Talk to me about what type of energy you bringing into this podcast today.
Nah, man, I'm good, man. I'm cooling, cool like I am. I forget what movie that's from, but like that's how I'm feeling today, bro. Like I'm chilling. It's been a week of feeling like there's not enough hours in the day, and so I've just been. And I've been combating that with just like, trying to be as organized as possible, really like writing out lists of like, all the things I have to do. And sometimes, that's all it takes. Sometimes in your head, it feels like, man, I got to do so much. I got to move mountains today. And then you put it into a list. It was like, all right, well, that's like, 4 things, but they going to be hard things, but even writing them out, is a way to start approaching it. So it being Sunday, I've managed to both get a lot done, check a lot of things off those lists, and not go like too crazy and not sleeping or not. So I'm good, man. I'm in a good place. You
tapped in. Tapped in. On the note of writing things down, that's actually a strategy, a psychology strategy on how to deal with anxiety and how to deal with stress. It's also a strategy that people employ when it comes to insomnia. It is just getting those thoughts out and on paper. It just allows you to be able to contextualize it and visualize it in a different way. The brain interprets it in a different way and can allow for one to mellow out. So that's a very strong strategy you have going on over there, especially when things are getting busy like they are right now.
Yeah, man, it's the list definitely includes like trying to be, and some of that anxiety I think comes from the start of like it's October and it seems like time has been moving ridiculously fast. So we
Yeah.
already moving into a space where it's like, all right, Christmas gifts gotta happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
True.
because the post service is messed up. People are voting. Hopefully y'all voted out there. You know what I'm saying? I voted this past week. Hopefully,
Congratulations.
yeah. Thank I love that we congratulate each other for all these for reading, voting. But but like that's real, bro. Like, yeah, you're like, you know what I mean? I think it's important to exercise that right. Get in the habit of participating, right? Even if you might not feel like in your particular district that your vote is moving mountains for a presidential election, make sure you're voting locally, make sure you're checking out what's going on and just getting the habit of participating and you know your civic right to make change and see what's going on in your society. So yeah, I forgot what
That was not your first time. That was not your first time voting, was it? You voted before?
yeah, no, I voted before. Voted for Barack.
Okay. A word? Is that what you voted for? With the black Chicago flag behind you. How was the voting process this time around? Talk to me about that. How did that go? What were your feelings going into it? You know, what was that experience like in this climate?
It was cool. It was cool. So this is actually kind of interesting. For a while, I had an address, my address in the burbs on my voter registration, and so I always had to drive out there to vote.
Trap house, you know what I'm saying? Got to keep the work and the money separate. Go ahead, keep going.
You got to keep a suburban address on your ID in case you get pulled over in Chicago and you got dreads and they gotta make them think twice about who you might be. God damn it. But so, anyway, what was I saying? So I used to drive out there to vote. I used to have to drive out there to like vote and stuff like that because my address was still out there. And I felt, you know, internally, I didn't really ever really do the math for like anything like that, but I always felt like voting, at least out there, felt more like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the white people around in that area was probably voting the other way against me always. So I felt like my vote mattered to cast it out there. Having to shift my address like back to out here finally for, you know, certain reasons, even though I've been living here for a minute. You know what I'm saying? Black shit. Yeah, you don't know what's going on. It's black.
You know.
But it was interesting because voting period, part of like my job has been informing people and telling people like, you know, it's been a part of, I got a mask that says vote. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It was interesting just to me that it happened to be that going to the polls this time, which was at like an elementary school around the way, was just like, you know what I mean? It was like, I didn't have that same effect of like, I'm gonna be this vote for, you know, Obama or for, you know, this blue vote and maybe what is a tiny compared to Chicago being a suburb, but like red spot. To be probably casting a similar ballot to the people that I saw around at the polls, but having encouraged maybe not the people around me, but some of the people of that community to go to the polls, it was still kind of a rewarding experience. I didn't even think about it like that till you asked me. So thank you. I didn't think you was going to appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, in a climate like this, right, where the stakes feel very high in terms of the repercussions of who wins and who doesn't win, and you know, I think it's important, especially to speak on the Black experience of voting. I know a lot of people have never voted before. I know a lot of people, this is something that is new to them. So, you know, I do think it's a conversation worth having. So thank you for sharing on that.
Yeah. I think that actually brings us to a topic we tossed around, you know, engagement, being engaged, voting, and that, like, how much is the right amount for each of us to participate in creating the world that we want to see, or at least engaging and correcting, you know, things that we don't like to see in society.
And I really do want this to be a very open conversation, because I think that there's no right way. There's never going to be enough that you can do to impact the society. I think that's just the reality of it. There's never going to be enough that you can do. You know? I mean, you think of
how much you doing? But Mo, if you're doing a lot already, we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. If you can, do more.
If you can, do more. Hold on, I'll give you a second. I just gotta open up the door in time.
For sure. Hopefully that's somebody that wants to do more right now. And if you would like to do more, subscribe to the All the Way Live podcast. You know what I'm saying? Follow us on Instagram. We're gonna start putting stuff up on Instagram, little clips. We're gonna monetize the clips, get the clips to y'all. It's gonna be funny, it's gonna be hilarious, it's gonna be informative. We're gonna try that. Other things, other areas in which we will improve. Lighting. We will light this bitch correctly. Everything correctly. It will be lit. He back.
Being a boyfriend, we will be better boyfriends too. We're talking about what we're gonna improve on. So just to, as I was saying, right, I don't think you'll never feel like you've done enough. You'll never feel like you've done enough, mainly because that the problems of communities vary so widely in the reasons why there's those problems. Problems, something as simple as a lack of education. In one particular area, you'll find that a lack of education is induced by lack of funding from lack of funding for the schooling system. And on the other end, you'll find that there's just been outdated books that do not allow students to be able to participate in the modern economy and in the modern scholarly environment, right? So that's the same problem, but they both have vastly different causes to them. And then you get to speak about the psychology of the people that are experiencing the problem. You have to realize you're speaking with people that have trauma. You have to realize that you're speaking with people that are coming from a place of hurt, a place of poverty, which has its own traumas on its own too. So, sometimes you think that feeding somebody, bringing food to somebody is solving the problem of hunger, when in fact the concept of what is important in one's mind is there's a fundamental disconnect to someone's relationship with food and how they go about it and how they secure resources for themselves outside of food. So that's that to me is my understanding of why of how much one can do. But just as you're saying, Miles, like doing more than nothing, I think is always doing enough.
Yeah. And whatever you do, whatever your thing is, right, that you do that you might feel like has nothing to do with, social justice or, changing the world, right? Change your intention in doing that. Like, I don't care if you're an analyst or an office worker, you know what I mean? Or if you're, somebody who, is an entrepreneur, or if you're a doctor or a nurse, you know what I mean? Educate yourself about the history of your field. And I promise you will find something that you can correct, something that you can, contribute to in a way that makes the world better based on, who you are, based on what you're genuinely interested in and what your genuine interests are, there are some very easy ones to go to, right? So if you're Black, the history of whatever field you're in inevitably involves barriers to Black people. Go and break them mugs. If you're a female, same thing. There's inevitably you're gonna run into barriers. Go ahead and break them mugs. You know what I mean? Depending on who you are, you can identify ways in which that you can transform your world by being the best you that you can be. But a lot of times that also involves acknowledging the role that you played in that history, right? And if you're real quickly, right? If you're a man, then in a lot of those stories, you haven't been in some ways complicit in the oppression of females in whatever industry, right? So when you look back to that, and that is an opportunity in itself to correct, right? To be a better, right, ally, to be a better, be more aware of the space that you occupy and how much space you can make for others, right? There's ways to do that in for all of us in our everyday lives.
100%. And I think that being vigilant, as you said, searching and finding, I think that's always step one of doing more than nothing, is just looking for the causes, understand the causes, researching the organizations that are dedicated to that cause, more likely than not, if we talk about serious causes, you're going to find a strong Black woman who's leading that the charge of whatever organization it is, more likely than not. That is just a fact of the statistics of who moves the needle when it comes to issues, especially Black issues. And the reason why I actually brought this up to you, Miles, is because, after our pod went up on Nigeria, the thousands of people that watched it contacted us. They're talking in the comments, and what they were saying is, a lot of people feel very helpless. A lot of people feel very helpless, especially your expats who are not in Nigeria at the moment. They are at home. They are, expats. So they're outside their country, their home country. They're seeing these atrocities that are happening. The Lekki massacre that happened last week. Earlier this week. That's a reality for people. So being at a distance from it, you feel like you're not doing enough. And so I know that that's something that me and you struggled when Black Lives Matter happened. I think we're fortunate in the sense that a lot of our work is dedicated to serving the communities and helping organize, especially yourself, organizing for those communities, places where they can either march, protest, speak, vent, whatever the case is. You help organize those spaces, right? So as somebody that is an authority when it comes to what the solutions are in times of a crisis, what would you then stipulate to be a fair amount of contribution to the struggle?
I would say your fair amount of contribution depends on very much on who you are. So like speaking again to America, right? Like what has been your experience in this country? Are you a Black person? Are you a Black American? Are you a Black immigrant? Are you, Latinx? Are you, a European descendant? What has been you and your family's history in this country, and where has that placed you, right? Because that is what determines where you are, what opportunities you have, right? What schools you went to, what secondary educational opportunities that you had after that, what job opportunities, to connect, who your family knows, and the network of people that they were able to enlist to help you get jobs, get internships and stuff like that. So based on all of that, what room to breathe do you have past survival to turn back and help someone else? I think is that the baseline of like what determines how much effort each person should give, like, back to their community. I think when people turn to look back to see how much they can help, it seems like they can't do a lot because they don't know how to do that, right? There's so many problems, and it seems like when I turn, I can't do anything because it takes so much to do anything that matters. And I don't think that's the case. I think people are so in tune with the whole world because they have the internet and their phone and, social media, and they know what their friends are doing miles, countries, continents away, right? But
Yeah.
so, and maybe you can't affect the world immediately in a way that you see ripples in all of those spheres. But if you put your phone down and look out your window, right? Look at where you live. What do the people around you live like? Do they live good? Okay, cool. That means you probably have financial resources. That means you probably have, just a wealth of things that you can help people. So that's, if they don't live good, then, well, you have to make sure, okay, are you taking care of yourself? How do you live? Are you all right? And if you are, what makes you all right? And what is a part of the village or the system that makes you all right? And how can you bring other people into that, but look locally first, so you're not so overwhelmed that it feels like you can't do nothing.
Because that's a real feeling too, is that overwhelming feeling of not doing enough, right? And I think it's a very important to accept your insignificance in the grand scheme of the issues of the world. Humble yourself to the fact that you will never be doing enough, no matter how much you're doing, and try to do the little amount that you can. Our the saying that we have in our organization is we're just really trying to change the life of one person, you know, because like that's really what you hope for. You hope to impact the person that can impact the next person. That's the ideal, that's the ideal outcome of these things, you know, going into it expecting to change every single person. That's almost nonsensical. And so for my brothers and sisters that are fighting the good fight in Nigeria, that are protesting out there or protesting anywhere, uh, people that are not protesting, people that are just at home looking and trying to find ways to add towards their communities and whatnot. Like Miles said, there's a whole lot of research that you can do that starts to just like the empirical that you can see, and start with what you can see and can help contribute to. And I think that scientifically there's a lot of value in endorphins that you get back when you help people. There's a literal high in that, and we speak about that sometimes, you know, when you come back from a day of helping a bunch of kids and you're just like, man, I just feel really really good.
Yeah, big facts. That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Um, and so to the people at home, right, that feel far away from whatever crises they would like to have an impact on, continue to educate yourselves as well. Continue to share information, right? Continue to, like that. You have no idea how much you can affect change it just by continuing to, you know, share and apply pressure in terms of what we're trying to make happen. You know what I mean? We as a generation have seen so many flare up social justice initiatives die. The ones that you care about, keep them alive by continuing to post about them, continuing to educate yourself about them, continuing to have conversations with the people you care about, tough conversations with the people you care about that might not care about the things that you care about, right? Continue to apply that pressure. And that can be uncomfortable, right? I'm glad you spoke so well to the things that the endorphins that you do get back in a positive manner, right? From giving back and engaging with your community. But I also want to be very real about the fact that there are people that are uncomfortable with that. There are people that are very comfortable with the status quo and don't want to see people move that needle. And
Yeah.
so apply the pressure, and you'll know you're doing something right when you feel good, but it's uncomfortable.
Yes, and that is the essence of growth, bro. That is the essence of growth, is when the intrinsical value of what you get back from what you're doing is high and matched with how challenging and uncomfortable the situation you're in. You know, I think speaking directly to us in this podcast, that was something that we were at a place where we're like, listen, it feels good to do this, but also it challenges us and confronts us um, in ways that are outside of our comfort zone, having to put our art forward, having to curate and be camera facing, you know, despite what the news channels might say. Uh, for the most part, men, you know, we live a very quiet, reserved, and private life. You know,
Yo,
This-
yo, I see you. This nigga put the jersey on, came to play today. Came to
come
play
on,
today.
baby.
Came to play
Come
today.
on, it's the
Hey,
playoffs, man.
I appreciate you, dog. I appreciate you, dog. And I appreciate having somebody that, you know, that can help me figure out, you know, and we appreciate y'all out there, man. We appreciate y'all too for being a part of this conversation. Um, and like in a space to help figure out like what does it mean to try and help, and what is and how do you continue to like work on yourself, work on the world around you, and continue to have the energy for all of those things when a lot of times, like we said at the beginning of this, the current to change any of that is, it feels like you're always swimming upstream. So thank you for slamming that
Always.
point like a boss.
That's real, bro. You know what scares me about what I'm noticing in today's day and age when it comes to how people rally for social issues? The flare up aspect of it leads me to be fearful the of the very narrow impact that this flaring up of social issues can actually have on issues, right? In the sense that we have a lot of issues. You know, in South Africa, it's gender-based violence, in Nigeria, it's SARS, and the U.S. is Black Lives Matter. And we rally, we get together, we spark up a million people marching in LA, and then very quickly it dissipates. And once it dissipates, it no longer is a conversation on the solution on the overall issue. It then dwindles down into the effectiveness that the committed and the resourceful can have. And a lot of the times that is something that is rather incremental in terms of the whole issue. Now, I don't believe in being able to completely solve a lot of the issues that I had mentioned in the place, especially in the places that I mentioned them, because a lot of them do have underlying psychological predispositions in it that are ingrained in either the people that are victims or the people that are being perpetrated. There's a psychological aspect to it. So I don't think you can turn off racism in the US or turn off violence in South Africa or turn off bad policing and corruption in Nigeria. You know, those things are too ingrained in psyche. That being said, that's what worries me about today's flare up culture of how people approach social issues, mate.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so I think it's important to acknowledge that there is. That's a great point. That's a great point, G.
Mm,
So I think it's important to acknowledge that there is no light switch, solution to any of these issues. Um,
yeah.
I think what you've struck upon is what I've something I've started to recognize as well, and I feel like is a cycle, but that doesn't necessarily have to be like a bad thing. It's what we got, right? So we work with what we got. So what happens is something terrible happens, as it do, right? As a result of
Yeah.
the systems that are in place. And people see that and want to change it and rally around it. And those are opportunities for the people you spoke about, right? The truly dedicated, the people that do the work on a daily basis, have been doing that work for years. I'm not talking about me or us. I'm talking about niggas with beards. I'm talking about niggas that have been in this game with the grays. You know what I mean? There's people that have been studying and doing this work for a long time that have laid the foundation for a lot of what we're trying to do, right? A lot of what we're building
Yeah.
on, right? The people who are in the books that, you know what I mean? The people that
Yeah. The old white man that wrote the book on black problems.
but the people that are in those books, you know what I mean? Like the people
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
people, not the white people, but the people of color, the oppressed people that have been working to make change, then you can find that foundation in any struggle, right? People that have been struggling against that. And so I think it's important for us to like understand that, to look to those people, right? Because those people do have a plan. And y'all been ignoring them until something terrible happened. And then they get a brief spotlight. And now nobody's been following any of these people when until something happened. So now everybody's slowly figuring out, oh, Dr. Umar Johnson, oh, Cornel West, oh, Michael Eric Dyson, oh, Eve Ewing, oh, you know what I mean? Everybody's gravitating to whatever
Yeah.
intellectuals they're being fed by their feed, right?
Yeah.
And then those people have a chance to speak, and then people gravitate toward them. Their messages proliferate for a while, and then it dies back down, right, until the next crisis. But in there,
Yeah.
some of those people that heard those messages are galvanized to follow, right? To galvanize, to continue to research, to galvanize, to find more than the first person they found, but the other people, and to compare and contrast ideas and continue to do the research between these traumatic, terrible events that happen as they do, right? And so each time the pool of people that have been doing it for a couple years now grows bigger, right? And so I think it's important for all of us to determine, well, for each of the issues that truly matters to us, how long until we join the group of people that has been contributing to following this for a couple of years, that already that knows who the people are who has been doing the work. Because once you do that, right, you start to run into the plan, right? So for example, like, and I'm not an expert on anything, and that's something I want to get into too, is like how Africa is not talked about in the same with the same regularity and cadence that issues in the rest of the world are talked about. But what I have run into since looking up the SARS situation in Nigeria, right, is that there is they've shifted from the end SARS hashtag to, I think it's the 505, and it's 5 explicit demands, right, that they have for. I low key had this pulled up. It's gonna seem like we had this conversation more planned than we did, but
Because we
so
have pre-production. Thank you very much.
pre-pro. So
Pre-pro.
so the 5 demands, it's 5 for 5, not 505. Hashtag 5 for 5, right? The first demand is the immediate release of all arrested protesters. The second demand is justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensation for their families. The third demand is setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reports of police misconduct within 10 days.
I like that.
Yeah. The fourth demand is in line with the new Police Act, psychological evaluation and retraining to be conducted or to be confirmed by an independent body of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed. And then number 5 is to increase to the police salary so that they can adequately be compensated for protecting lives and the property of citizens, in lieu of
That last one is impressive.
It's important, right? So the whole point that I was trying to make is that there are people, there's a foundation committed to whatever cause that you care about, right? And so start to follow those people and consistently, and not so that you know who to turn to for information when something happens, but continue to follow that all the, like, you know what I mean? Incorporate news of learning about that issue into your daily life so that you have an understanding, and don't just follow one source. Find other sources to inform yourself. Find the ones and make sure you're going at it critically, because unless you're finding some that to throw out, you're doing it wrong, because not everybody is real about all the causes. But educate, and meditate. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And have pre-pro.
And have pre-pro for this smooth effect. Something interesting that you touched on, bro, is why African news tends to fail in comparison, right? And I think, speaking from my humble observation, what I've realized is I think there's a capitalistic element to it, right? I think generally the news and media tend to follow that where capital, that where there's space for, there's just capital interest period, right? I think the news follows that. I think that's why when things are shaking, and for instance, when things were shaking in Venezuela, for sure with social unrest, and it's terrible, but also the US is one of the largest investors in the oil reserves that are in Venezuela and the refineries that are used over there. And then it becomes an issue of capital interest. We've seen the same thing when it comes to on the same week that the Charlie Hebdo shootings happened. I want to say the Charlie Hebdo shootings or the Paris shootings, one of the two. 100 people were shot and killed in a Kenyan university. Same week that happened, and it was paid for Paris. It was the Paris shootings. Same week that happened, and all interest went into the Paris side of things. Right now, that's the capitalism aspect to it. Now there's a deeper conspiracy when we're talking about the historical tendency of destroying African news and destroying African literature and African history. That's something that has been reoccurrent and a constant within African history. We know about the libraries in Timbuktu. We know about the libraries in Sudan. We know about the astrology that was used in the pyramids and things of that nature. These, there's famed scholars from those areas, but then their libraries, history, the recordings, all those things have been tarnished. Now, that is the deeper conspiracy of it. But I think when we're speaking of why African news doesn't tend to be cared about mostly, it would seem to me to be a capitalism thing, man. Not to be that guy.
Yeah. And
I want to be that guy.
so I so I think
It's a difficult one for sure.
yeah, it is really tough because I think I think you're exactly right, but also think there's something to be said for like why can't we so like all right, let me take it this direction. There are issues that might not be necessarily as capitalistic, right? So if we think about the African continent, we have multiple countries, right? Namibia, South Africa, where gender-based violence is a huge issue, right? I mean, the world,
Rampant.
right? And so, do you think? I just, this is what I was trying to tease out in my head, but I'll have you speak to. What do you think is the reason for the dampening of maybe that information about that? Do you think it has the same capitalistic base?
Surely, surely. Namibia, there's only 800,000 people that. uh, Sorry, there's only 2 million people in Namibia. That's not a lot of people. That's smaller than the city of Austin. You know, um, and with South Africa, also, bro, let's never ignore the fact that Black lives don't really matter to a lot of people. I think that's just a reality of Black lives, dude. Things Black lives don't necessarily matter. I mean, you look at the response that Ebola had when they touched down in Africa, and the response that I had when one dude came back with it in Texas. That'll tell you everything you need to know about the experience that it takes for people to approach issues. I think it's a very fascinating thing. I'd be very interested to read up on some of the information on media and how that was, and historically how that's reported on African issues.
Yeah. And I think what you said just kind of illuminated for me like that it seems like typically over time that not only do are black people discarded by the media, but it often or like the issues that pertain to black people discarded by the media and shaped and framed a certain way. But also that has to be done because a lot of times it does point back to large it if we look too deeply into the root causes of things, they point right back at ourselves. So in the case
Yeah.
of maybe gender-based violence, right? How much can Fox News or CNN or any of these companies really thoroughly investigate that? Well, they have literally that same issue happening not only in our country but in those companies and those institutions, right?
Yeah.
How can you know how can we report on specific issues in countries where you know people are being exploited for capitalistic reasons and we might have interests in those reasons, right? So I think it points back at it points back at us just as much as to the point is people want to make the money, right?
Thanks, bro. And this is an interesting concept too that I've been toying with when thinking about this topic is that I think there's a romanticism of issues in Africa that Western countries have. And the romantic aspect of it is that if I donate $1 every day, then I'm solving the problem. So that's why issues like hunger are such popular issues, right? Feed an African kid for $1 a day. Now, when we talk about the fact that gender-based violence and rape and all these things are happening, you can't feed $1 a day to solve that issue. That doesn't slap the same with Sarah McLachlan talking about it over sad music. It doesn't slap the same. That issue is a lot more deeper, and it forces us to have a longer conversation about the impact and legacy of trauma when it comes to oppression because those cycles of violence are very prevalent in communities that have experienced trauma. That's just statistics. The cycle of who is to be in abusive relationships stems from who has been in an abusive household. That's a fact. And where that stems from, and if you trace that line back down, is which people were exposed to violence, which people were exposed to very grotesque and violence on a daily basis, and then those people develop mechanisms and ways of coping that are then normalized and ingrained into systems that then sprout as these toxic violent fruits, man. I think that's where we are.
So what does it say about our society that we're at a place where the issues that are most dire are too complicated for us to talk about on the news?
We're lazy consumers, bro. And that's what I spoke to you about when it came to like the flare up thing, right? Because it's easy when we're all doing something simple as marching. Which is very important. That's very important. We're not taking that away. It's easy when we're all blacking out our Instagram. That's very important. And we all did it. And no one gets discredited if that's all that they did. However, the true impact then comes from the foot soldiers who are then willing to continue the fight, continue the struggle, and then the convenience of mob mentality dissipates, and then you're left with actually having to do work, and that's where you lose a lot of people.
Mm, mm.
I think that's the romanticism of it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, how long until you decide that you're going to be one of those people that is invested, right, between news cycles, right?
Mm,
And if you stay invested long enough, you'll realize that involves a lot of work. It's
a
work.
lot of work.
You've uncovered work for
For sure.
you to do and for you to encourage others to do, right? And that's a difficult.
No- Nothing but work. Nothing but work.
Man, that's a difficult place to be because I've seen people who've hit that realization, right? And they start to do the work, right? And then what the work requires of you is to encourage others to do the work as well. And then you run into
Yeah.
which of your friends bristle at being told to do the work about things that you care about, asked to do the work, right? You know what I mean? How many that creates an uncomfortable that creates an uncomfortable space, man. And you're asking a lot.
100%.
You're asking a lot to turn that corner, if you will, to turn that corner of I care when we all care. When you're the response, right? To turn that corner from being the we care, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, to you being this voice shouting.
Yeah.
It's a lot lonelier. You might hear your voice warble a little bit.
Oh yeah. Those echoes fall on many a deaf ears. Let me tell you that right now.
And yeah, right. When to see how many people shout back. You know what I mean? To put yourself in that vulnerable position, that's a difficult corner to ask people to turn.
Too difficult almost. But the good thing though is that as I said on the last podcast, man, I'm so proud of where our society and our generation is taking things. The fact that we're utilizing the sharing of information so effectively to voice our opinions, our concerns, and to motivate for causes that are strong is something that I'm very proud of, man. And so we stand, I think, as two very privileged Black men in today's day and age, that we have a platform to speak our thoughts, speak our minds. And I'm still even more glad now that we always have found a way to utilize this to promote the efforts of those that are doing things that are doing the real work, that are doing things that are difficult, that are doing things when there's no spotlights on them. There's no glamour in this altruism thing, man. Because there's very little glamour in this thing, man. It's helping people and listening to people. That's really all it comes down to.
Ain't no getting money on this conscious shit.
Never that. Not yet. There is a way though.
There's a way. But I think
there is a way.
But I think even more important than the bag, I think something that we can do a better job of, right, is like, and I know I'm speaking to the team. I'm talking to you. And
by
me.
the team, I mean you.
By the team, I mean you and me. So it's just more. Again, we've uncovered work, but I think we can be better about putting links to the things that we're talking about, the important ones, right? Not necessarily the National Geographic count of sharks, but like The important,
Yeah.
the links to the important issues and documenting. I you mentioned an organization that was it Noni has building blocks, something like that.
Building blocks is a nosy, a friend of mine nosy. Yeah, building blocks.
Yeah. So I'm saying I want to be better about linking stuff like that. You know what I mean?
I agree. I
Um,
agree.
yeah, and just
And yeah, if that's all this podcast has to offer, I'm so happy and comfortable with that.
hey, bro, hey, bro. It's a place to start, isn't it? It's a place to start.
It is a place to start. And also, the opposite of start is finished. And if we're talking about things that are finished, we are commemorating the career of Khabib Nurmagomedov after a spectacular victory against Justin Gaethje has announced his Siri, get out of here. Has announced his retirement.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Fan, man. I feel like Siri. I'm a Khabib fan as well. Um, I think I
What a
love.
fight. Can we talk about the fight? Can we talk about the fight?
Yeah, dude. The Was it a fight? It was. Come here.
It wasn't come here. Khabib took some serious shots from Gaethje, like to the head.
Yeah, yeah, he did. I mean, but we know he has a chin. He fought Portier. I mean, he took those shots. He took a couple shots there too. He's not, and he got a chin. He got a whole head. That whole head. He a
He's
tough.
got a
Dude.
big head.
He got a big head, dude. He could take shots. Toughness was never something I doubted from Khabib. So to see him make it a huge problem every time he got a hold, you know what I mean?
It was a problem.
It was a problem. There was no question in terms of grappling. You don't want to see that man. You don't want to see that man. So I think
When he holds you, it's game over. The second he grabs Justin Gaethje, bro, you knew where it was going. The fact that he got him with the triangle, with the triangle bar, dude, with the leg
out
lock
that first round,
face.
saved by the eked out. But I think he's a power. I think that's who he is. That's who he's always been, bro. You know what I mean? From the time we were introduced to him, 29-0, he's been. You don't want to see him. He will end you. I'm very sad. I'm very sad we have not seen Ferguson Khabib. I'm sad that hasn't happened up to this point.
Khabib would have ate him up.
I hope that Khabib will come out of retirement if the Ferguson matchup becomes a thing, because I think that's it's Ferguson's division to take. If
Nah, Justin Gaethje's taking that division, bro. Gaethje and Poirier are about to fight top spot for that division. Justin Gaethje, the way he beat Tony Ferguson, it was demolishing. He whooped him by a distance, broke his game plan down to the decimals. I think Poirier has the ability to do that too.
I don't know if I think Poirier has the ability to do that.
That's a fight, bro.
I think Gaethje is. It's less interesting to me because I think Gaethje and Poirier are more similar, and I think Gaethje just has the sliders up in more categories.
Yeah. I think Gaethje takes top dog status, but I think what's interesting about the Khabib thing is quitting at his prime, ending his career literally right at the top, and it begs the question of what does it even mean to be in one's prime? What does it mean to be at one's pinnacle? I see with the UFC, you can measure that in terms of how many wins he's on, the level of opponents that he's fighting. What does it mean to be in one's prime in just like daily life?
Yeah, I hope it means I hope it means that you are. I hope it's not a point. You know what I mean? I hope it's not I hope it's not something you reach and then decline from. Right? I hope it's a period.
It has to be
a period.
It has to be.
If nothing else, right? So, I think to be in your prime means to be operating at your highest capacity. But I think that can mean different things at different points of your life. So I think if you can reach that, if you can find a way to like vibrate at your highest level, right? Like if you can find a way to be being your best self in all things, then you can sustain that for a long time. And I don't think that I wonder what that means for, you know, what is there a select period in that that's your prime to be judged by others? Or is that whole period your prime as long as you doing you the best way that you could do you?
And that you're right. You're very, very right. What's interesting is that there's different types of primes that you can get, right? You have your physical prime that men hit between the ages of 28 and 31. That's your physical prime. That's when your body is capable of doing the most amount of things. You have your professional prime, which people say is at 50 years old for men and women both. Emotional prime is around the same time too. You know, it's there's different levers to being at one's prime. What is most important for you to be at your prime at?
Um, I think it's interesting, right? Because when you look at life, right, like what's most important for me to be at my prime at? Like I would say that I want to be like the best brother that I can be. You know what I mean? The best son, the best grandson, like the best, you know, like to the people that I care about, I want to be the best part of that support system that I can be,
Mm,
right? Um, I think as a black man, that definitely means having to like step up and take on a mental responsibility as a role model because the community needs it, right?
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so the community being even my family, like my little cousins, you know, need to be able to look up and see that like you can be something, my somebody I know, somebody that I'm related to, somebody that be at my family reunions that I can touch and hug and see is quote unquote successful or at least feeding himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And taking care of
He's
his
definitely feeding himself.
definitely feeding himself. He's getting fat. He taking care of his responsibilities. He pays rent, pays bills. There's a way for me to make it in life because
You
I
say
think
you get fat.
but I think that's real, bro. I think for a lot of black little boys and girls, bro, like there's not. I know for me, like I had my dad, but my dad always looked tired as hell to me. You know what I mean? Because he was.
Because he was. Because he was.
Because he
Is why.
was. You know what I mean? And so it was important, and I would cling to different, you know, like conceptualizations of what a successful black man looked like. Right? I didn't have the same
Like
appreciation.
Lil Romeo.
Hey nigga, he was successful at my age. How the fuck was I supposed to not? You know what I mean? How was I supposed to not? You know, try to be him. You know what I mean?
Like Romeo.
You know what I mean? Or a version of that. You know, uh, Snoop on the Wire, right? You know, uh, there's a there's a I feel like I was wanted that role model, and so I try to be that, trying to be the person, right, that you needed as a child, right,
Mm,
is a part
mm,
of. So
mm.
it's important for me to be my prime in being that for my family, being the person that my family needs now that I'm not a child.
Yeah.
What's it important for you to be in your prime of?
Present state of mind.
Mm, mental.
Present
That's
state of
important.
mental. Yeah, yeah.
They trying to rob you. They
Because,
trying to rob us of that, boy.
bro, with the ski mask on and a hand grenade, bro, this is it's it's rough out here. But I think presence of mind is mostly it, bro. I'm realizing that a lot of things can be conquered by being present, um, and being attentive to the now and being conscious of the now. It sounds very, very dusty, but I think it's a reality and something that I take very, very seriously. I think impulses are also mitigated by presence and present state of mind. I think bad decisions are mitigated by the same thing. So presence and a state of mind is something that I put high on that list of, um yeah, it's just things I put very high on that list of things that I'd like to be on my prime for.
Sounds like clarity, right? It sounds like it's very important for you to be able to have clarity in, you know, your daily life, and that you find that through, right, meditating, or, you know, how do you find that? How do you reach that? What does that mental prime look like? You know, are you in it?
Um, my personal mental prime, I'd say sure. But also there's so much to learn, right? So like I'm at my prime in the sense that I am further than I was yesterday. I'm further than I was last year, but that doesn't mean that I'm at the pinnacle, right? It just means I'm at a higher plateau than I'm at a higher level than I was before. How to find that, dude? I heard someone say that meditating is like brushing your teeth. You know, it's not fun to do, but it's the most important. Like, it's a very important habit to get into, and I've taken it that way. So meditating in the morning, 10, 15 minutes before I start anything. First thing I do when I wake up is get to the meditating and clear my mind before I assume on the energies of other people.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
If I can take something that's very positive to like a darker gray area for a second, what happens when
let's go.
what happens when you don't do that? What does clearing that space fend off for you? You know what I mean? Demons.
Like I was, a lot of people's demons are just neurological impulses, right? It's a mind run amok. Now, obviously, people there's a reality of mental issues, of mental health issues, and things of that nature, and that's not necessarily what we're speaking about. What we're speaking about is the inability for one to pace, to slow their mind down, right? And so what you end up seeing is a lot of people with insomnia. Lack of sleep is a common result of a restless mind. Um, just uh, giving into impulses, uh, things such as binging and what's the other name that they call for the technical term? It's binging and
Oh,
purging, yeah, binging and purging. That's a reality. That scientifically is more likely to happen in your brain when it's more stressed and the brain has had less time to be able to process information. The same area of the brain that handles stress is the same area of the brain that is triggered when one has to make food decisions at that time. Your brain is telling you that, hey, you're low energy, you're stressful, you're thinking too much. What can pick me up? Sugar, food. Let's get sugars and food. And then people are more likely to have to lean more towards fatty foods and sugary foods when in that mind state. So that's a direct correlation of that, you know. So when we talk about what you lose out on when you're not set in that state in that presence of mind is you become your emotions, man. You become your emotions and your impulses, I think.
you don't want to become your emotions.
That's not who you are. You're not your emotions. You're merely an observer of your emotions, but you're not your emotions.
Mm. So what do
You're
you
not your emotions.
so what do you act on?
Better yet, you're not your thoughts. Let me put it that way. We have control of our emotions, but we're not our thoughts. Our thoughts are we are observers of our thoughts. We are not our thoughts.
Mm. So what do we
Yeah.
act on? Thoughts,
Impulse.
emotions. But
All of it.
what do we what that's what so we should act on impulse. What should we?
Yo, I was reading this cold book that was busy talking about this cold book called The Leading Brain, and it was talking about how like all these thoughts, impulses, and emotions all happen within. It's like the past, present, and future. There's a paradox of a sphere that all of these things are happening at the same time. It's not necessarily a domino effect of how those things come about, but they all exist at the same time. Your thoughts. I think Mike Tyson said your thoughts are governed by your emotions, and your emotions are governed by your thoughts. And I just found that interesting because it is like a loop of how we come to our decisions.
Yeah,
Yeah. Is that something that's prevalent in your life? Meditation and things like that?
I meditate in my own way. I meditate in my own way.
Miles beating off with his eyes closed. This and it
Yo, Actually, actually, now that you bring it up, as an
Day, yo.
you took it there. As an alternative to porn, I do try and like, you know what I'm saying? When I'm like, all right, I'm gonna beat off, sometimes there is like a decision in my head, like, well, do I want to watch porn or I want to every dude, I think, and most people probably you got a mental spank bank. You got, you know, some historical stuff that done happened to you that sometimes you just like to sit and think about. Remember when Shorty had sometimes you do
Porn
do that.
cocktail in the fridge, refrigerated porn cocktails.
Sometimes you see, but mental porn cocktails for sometimes for me that feels like a good, not to always just be like, you know, watching porn and stuff like that. But you took it there. That's not what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, you know, sometimes music is meditative for me. You know what I mean?
Also,
Um,
go on that.
yeah, like there's it's and I mean I understand that not everybody has this connection, you know, to necessarily the music. But for me, like I can there's a connection for me when I find a song that really, you know, the beat, the lyrics, everything like really uh kind of just it all aligns to express an emotion that I felt. It's almost like I get a release from like playing that song real loud. You know what I mean? And I'm sure other people experience that to varying degrees, but for me, like I dedicate time to be like to just kind of listen to my thoughts, my emotions, and like seek out the music that matches it, and just like go through it, and just like, you know, let the music flow, let my thoughts flow, like let that flow to like what I want to hear next, and kind of like think about those things, like, you know what I mean? Like, well, why am I feeling like this? Who am I thinking of when I'm listening to this song that makes me feel good? You know what I mean? What am I thinking of when I'm listening to this song that makes me feel bad? You know what I mean? And so that's a meditative process for me, that like just going through records um is like a therapeutic process for me. Showers are another one, right? Like
Yeah.
ever since like a kid, I take like long showers, bro. Like, and I'll just like kind of that's a big part of like my day and my mental preparation for anything is just to like sit in the shower, like, you know, and just kind of like think, you know what I mean? Sometimes music, sometimes not, but that's a big space where I
Think.
need to have just like let my thoughts just, you know, work themselves out. And for me to, as you said, observe my thoughts and what am I thinking about today? What's on my mind? That's important as I continue to observe my actions, right? And decide what I'm going to do, engage in and not engage in. So I try to dedicate time to like actually sitting and meditating. I do this thing where I count 8 count inhale, 8 count exhale, you know, and I try and I do that. But it's not a, some days it's that, some days it's the music thing, some days the shower is enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got options.
Yeah.
You got options, and I think it's just at least from what I've been reading, right? That's what Deepak Chopra talks about, which is practicing the muscle of the presence of mind. And I think it's as simple as that. Really, there's just a muscle behind being able to be more present, and people just got to exercise those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, they're not. That's an interesting tangent to go on after talking about being in one's prime. That's a very interesting detour we took and how we got there.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to what we care about, right? I mean, I think you care about your mental state. I think that's something that, you know, we have to actively try and preserve, you know, in these times with all the, you know, it's very easy to mentally overdose on content, right? Whether that be news in real life, whether that be, you know, noise and, you know, drowning out your own thoughts, whether that be, you know, just, you know, nonsense and or narrow-mindedness, or, you know, it's easy to just follow your feed all the way to madness. And I think we have to be very conscious, considering how tethered we are to technology, to take that break and let our brain, you know, reset, let it regulate, you know.
I hate to be Mr. We're addicted to our phones, but that's just the reality of the science behind it. I'm not going to break it down behind this podcast. If you haven't watched The Social Dilemma, give that a look, give that a spin. That is extremely, extremely informative stuff, and talks about, um, it talks about the fact that we're predestined to be addicted to these devices. An interesting parallel that they draw is that the same way they describe drug users is the same way that they describe internet users. It's not. It's the users. We're users when it comes to when it comes to this type of stuff. That being said, yeah, give that a look. Social Dilemma if you haven't. It's on Netflix. Solid.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
It's super solid. Do we have anything on the list? Are you trying to take us anywhere?
I think we covered everything on the list. I mean, I got shit we could talk about for days. The Kanye interview. Did you see that?
I just started the Kanye interview right now. I had somebody that I know watch it, but they gave me a mixed review. What have you given it a watch yet?
Yeah, I'm like an hour and a half into it.
Thoughts?
My
Talk
take
on
on
it.
my take on Kanye for the last year or so has been we should stop listening to Kanye, stop devoting the same attention to him, because I think he needs to be alone with his thoughts for a while. You know what I mean? I think we need to stop being at the beck and call of Kanye's promotional opportunities, because it allows him to not think through what he's saying, what he's going to do, what he's going to say. And it ends up being messy. It ends up being, running contrary to the best interest of communities that I don't think he's trying to, I don't think he's intentionally trying to hurt, but the effect of his actions, can potentially hurt those communities. With this interview, I'm torn because he sounds healthier than I've heard him sound in a longer time, but I don't in a long time. But I don't think he understand. To him, as a just announced him being a billionaire and a self-proclaimed genius, I think to him the world is and I think, it's funny, and I'm so conflicted because I kind of see it this way myself, is that like the world is like you can mold it to be whatever you want to be, right? Like
It's
you can,
malleable.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like you can really take a hold of your opportunities and make them work for you in such a way that, like, you can be great at whatever you want to be great at. That's not always going to equal to monetary success. Not all of us have the same access to those opportunities. But what I think is the problem with Kanye is that in trying to play Legos with corporations and communities and movements, he don't
And God
care.
and church.
He don't care about the people that kind of get swept and lost in the sauce. You know what I mean? He's, to him, I went the wrong way for a little bit. Is I swerved the wrong way, but it was a part of my journey to get back here. But I'm not sure he's conscious of how many people are spouting his rhetoric, retweeting it, using it for other means, like, and all the people that are getting hurt while he tries to construct this utopia that he feels is going to be good for everybody. So I'm happy the brother sounds healthy, but I think he sounds coherent. He sounds peaceful. He doesn't sound like he's trying to hurt anybody. He sounds like if you listen to him, he sounds like he has the purest of intentions in everything that he's trying to do. But I would say that he's still in a place. I don't think he's in a place yet where he understands the gravity of the moves that he's trying to make and how quickly things he says and does can be used by people that are playing chess at a higher level to hurt the communities that he cares about.
It's fascinating. I'm gonna give it a spin. Would you say this boosts or decreases his credibility for his campaign run? Obviously, we know he's not going to win this year, but in the future run, do you think this bolsters his opportunity?
I think if you were thinking about voting for Kanye West, yeah, you would only be encouraged by this interview. I don't think he's going to convince anybody.
That's not who you voted for?
That is not who he wasn't on the ballot. That is what was I going to say? He is not who
Kanye.
I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, no.
I try to pick it up from he who is not without sin cast the first stone,
First
bro. I
stone.
know what you want me to tell you. I know what you want me to
I
tell
lost it. I lost it. But yeah, I think I hope he's continues to get better, but I also hope I don't think Kanye has a very short list of people that he'd be willing to listen to. And I think he needs to stretch that list out. Not necessarily people he can talk to, but people like read, nigga. God damn it.
That's a critique I heard from somebody at lunch today. They were just saying that it's missing academic inclination to it, which is why a lot of the thoughts and words come out sounding rather incoherent at times. Is that it's missing that appreciation um, for academic intellect, at least in the manner in which the information is spread out. Come on, sir, don't do that now. Just in the manner that the information is spread out, how he interprets it. You know, these are all things that people have said to me. I'm gonna give it a look. I'm not pressed to watch it, but I have a podcast now, so I have no choice.
Yeah. Give it a look. I wasn't pressed to watch that. I'm more excited to take a look at
Dion
Dave
Cole.
Dave what? Dion Cole dropped a special?
Not a special. It's him working out material for 40 minutes. But if you know, we're Dion Cole fans, so it's right up our alley. This is great stuff.
Oh. I think Letterman interviewed Dave.
That's right. Letterman did get did get a Chappelle interview. Yeah, I'll give that a look. David Letterman's a little vanilla for me. You know, a little too white dad jokey, but I'll give it a run.
Yeah, I mean, Chappelle is definitely somebody I would prefer to hear from as just like somebody who, you know, I'm encouraged by Kanye West's, you know, he's energized, how energetic he is. But I'm much more put at ease when I listen to Dave Chappelle break things down in a way that, you know, I think only old black souls are able to do. That's just like, hey, bro, it's hard. Gonna be hard.
It's hard.
Might be all right, though.
That's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard. Hey, man, I think that's covered it, man. We've been rocking over here for over an hour. I think we've gone through everything on the list. If there's something that we're missing, please, guys, comment below. We're building this thing up one day at a time, man. As Mal said, we're dedicated to improving the quality of this whole thing. We appreciate you for rocking out with us on this journey. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if you are at home struggling to make your community better, we love you. We support you, you know. And if you are at home just struggling to make your home better, we love you. We support you.
Indeed.
You are a part of this community. If you are listening at this point, because we know.
Yes,
you
we
got
do.
too many options when it comes to listening to a podcast, but we appreciate you rocking with All the Way Live. Live in the sense that we are celebrating life, live in the sense that we are celebrating Black life, celebrating Black people, celebrating Black struggle, live in the sense that we are figuring everything we are talking about out in real time with y'all. We appreciate y'all. And like that, peace, love, we gone.